The silver cord that binds a human soul to its creator is the same vibration that anchors the unconditional devotion of the dog to its master. You are mistaken if you believe that the end of a physical heartbeat marks the extinction of the profound consciousness that once looked at you with such singular focus. Life is a continuous stream of creative energy, and no spark of genuine love is ever wasted or deleted from the universal record. This is not about sentimental comfort, but about the structural laws of the spiritual dimension, where every shadow of devotion leaves a permanent mark on the fabric of eternity. If you have ever felt that a canine companion was more than a mere animal, you were sensing a cosmic truth that most people are too distracted to recognize. How does this shift your understanding of the animals currently sharing your home and your life? The transition from the physical world to the spiritual realm is not a change of location, but a change of vibration. To understand what happens to a dog after it leaves its physical shell, one must first understand that the universe is composed of layers of consciousness, each resonating at a specific frequency. Animals, particularly those that have lived in close proximity to human beings, occupy a unique position in this hierarchy. They are not merely biological machines driven by instinct. They are individualized expressions of a group consciousness that is gradually being pulled toward a more focused personal identity through the power of human interaction. The process begins with the concept of the soul pattern. Every living creature is a manifestation of a thought form held in the mind of the infinite. In the lower kingdoms, these thought forms are broad and collective. A wild animal operates primarily through the collective intelligence of its species. However, when a dog enters the sphere of human influence, a profound metaphysical alchemy begins to take place. The domestic dog is the bridge between the instinctive world and the self-aware world. This connection is forged through the repetitive application of love, discipline, and shared experience. When you look into the eyes of a dog, you are not just seeing a creature of habit, you are witnessing a soul pattern that is being fired in the kiln of human emotion. This interaction creates a permanent record in what can be described as the universal memory. This record is not a static file, but a living, vibrating energy field. When the physical body of the dog ceases to function, the energy that animated it does not dissipate into nothingness. Instead, it follows the line of least resistance, which is the bond of affection it established during its lifetime. The dog remains in the earth plane vibrations for a period, not because it is lost, but because its consciousness is still tuned to the frequency of the home and the person it loved. It is a common occurrence for the essence of a departed animal to remain near its human companion, providing a silent, invisible shield of comfort that is often felt as a sudden warmth or a fleeting sense of presence. This stage of existence is not permanent, nor is it a state of limbo. It is a period of transition where the animal's consciousness begins to assimilate the lessons of its physical life. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing as empty space. Everything is filled with the light of the creative forces. For the dog, this light manifests as a continuation of the environment it knew, but stripped of physical pain and limitation. The dog does not think in the way a human does, but it perceives through a heightened form of intuition that is far more accurate than human logic. It recognizes the spiritual signature of its master. This signature is like a beacon of light that remains visible to the animal even after the physical eyes have closed. The bond is not broken by death because the bond was never physical to begin with. It was an exchange of life force, only a weaving together of two different levels of consciousness. The dog's role in the spiritual economy is to act as a mirror for the higher attributes of the human soul: loyalty, patience, and non-judgmental love. As the dog moves further into the inner planes, it enters a state of rest that is highly restorative. In this realm, the animal is no longer subject to the decay of the flesh. It exists as a thought body, a form composed of the memories and the love it received and gave. This form is recognizable and distinct. It is here that the concept of waiting takes on a spiritual meaning. The dog does not wait in a state of suffering or longing, but in a state of harmonious suspension. It is held within the auric field of the person it is bonded to. This means that as long as the human continues their journey on earth, a part of the animal's vital essence remains linked to that human's spiritual path. They are, in a very real sense, part of the same spiritual family. The evolution of the animal is intrinsically tied to the evolution of the human. As the human grows in spirit and approaches a closer walk with the divine, the animal that served them is elevated along with them. This is the law of grace in action within the animal kingdom. The relationship between a human and a dog is a sacred trust that reaches far beyond the surface level of companionship or utility. When a dog is brought into a home, it is not by chance. It is an intersection of energy patterns that have been orchestrated by the laws of attraction and service. In the spiritual world, every action is recorded in the etheric substance of the universe, and the treatment of those in the lesser kingdoms is one of the most significant indicators of a soul's development. The dog serves as a physical grounding point for the higher emotions of the human being. It absorbs the anxieties, the frustrations, and the silent grief of its master, acting as a biological and spiritual filter. This service is not without a profound metaphysical consequence. As the dog absorbs these human vibrations, its own consciousness begins to expand and differentiate. It moves from the collective instinct of its kind into a more individualized state of being. This is the mechanism by which the animal kingdom eventually ascends into higher forms of awareness. This expansion of the dog's soul pattern is permanent. Once a dog has been truly loved and has responded with that singular, when unwavering devotion that characterizes the species, it can never return to being just another animal. It has been called out by name and by affection. In the spiritual dimensions, this manifests as a distinct light form that retains the personality and the specific traits of the dog as it was known on Earth. This light form is not a ghost in the traditional sense, but a projection of the creative energy that was built through years of shared life. This energy is indestructible. When the physical transition occurs, the dog enters a state of peace that is profound and luminous. It is a world of color and sound that corresponds to the highest vibrations of the natural world. There is no hunger, no cold, and no fear. Instead, there is a sense of belonging to a greater whole, while still retaining the special connection to the human soul it served. The connection remains active through the principle of sympathetic resonance. Just as a tuning fork will vibrate when a similar note is struck nearby, the dog in the spiritual world remains attuned to the emotional state of its master on Earth. If the master is in deep mourning, the animal feels the weight of that sorrow. However, if the master lives in a state of gratitude and spiritual purpose, the animal reflects that light. The dog does not miss the master in a way that causes suffering, for in the spiritual realm there is no separation as we understand it. To the dog's perception, the master is always present as a field of light in a familiar vibration. When the physical distance is an illusion of the three-dimensional mind, in reality the two souls continue to occupy the same spiritual space. This is why many people report seeing their departed pets in dreams or catching a glimpse of them out of the corner of their eye during moments of quiet reflection. These are not hallucinations. They are brief alignments of the physical and spiritual frequencies. The purpose of the animal in the spiritual world is also one of preparation. As the dog rests and integrates its experiences, it is also preparing for its next step in the cycle of life. For some, this may mean a return to the physical world in a new form, carrying with it the wisdom and the refinement it gained from its previous human association. For others, it remains in the inner planes as a guardian or a companion for souls that are also transitioning. There is a specific order to this. Nothing in the spiritual world is haphazard. The dog's presence in the afterlife serves as a bridge for the human when their own time comes to leave the physical body. It is often the dog that is among the first to greet the soul as it crosses over, providing a familiar and comforting anchor in an unfamiliar environment. This is the ultimate fulfillment of the dog's mission, to lead the way back to the light using the very bond of love that was forged on the earth plane. This mission is a reflection of the divine love that governs all things. The dog's capacity for unconditional forgiveness and loyalty is a direct manifestation of the Christ spirit in a form that humans can easily understand and accept. Through the dog, many humans learn the first lessons of selfless service and compassion. In the spiritual world, these lessons are seen as the most valuable currency a soul can possess. The dog, having taught these lessons, is honored in the spiritual economy. It is given a place of rest and beauty that surpasses anything the physical world can offer. The fields of the spirit are vast, and they are populated by the essences of all living things that have contributed to the upward reach of consciousness. The dog is a vital part of this tapestry. Its life was not a brief flash of biological existence, but a meaningful contribution to the overall harmony of the universe. The intelligence of the dog in the spiritual world is often underestimated because we measure it by human standards of speech and logic. In the higher dimensions, however, a communication is not through words but through the direct transmission of images and feelings. The dog becomes a master of this telepathic exchange. It understands the intentions and the spiritual state of those around it with a clarity that was impossible while confined to a physical brain. In this state, the dog recognizes the true nature of its master, not just as a provider of food and shelter, but as a spiritual being on a long and complex journey. The dog's role in the afterlife is to remain a steady, grounding influence for that soul. This influence often manifests as a form of spiritual protection. Just as a dog guards a physical house, its presence in the inner planes acts as a barrier against lower, discordant vibrations that might attempt to interfere with a person's peace. This protective quality is rooted in the purity of the dog's desire. Because the dog lacks the complex, ego-driven desires of the human, its spiritual will is focused and potent. It desires only the well-being of its beloved. This focus creates a vortex of positive energy in the spiritual world that can actually assist the human during their sleep or in times of crisis. When you are asleep, your soul often travels into the same dimensions where your departed companions reside. In these moments, there is a reunion and a recharging of the bond. You may not remember the details when you wake, but you carry back a sense of strength and a strange, unexplainable comfort. The dog is active in these encounters, offering its vital essence to help heal the emotional wounds that the master carries from the daily struggles of life on earth. And this is a form of ministry that the animal performs, authorized by the higher laws of service. The spiritual geography that the dog inhabits is shaped by the quality of the love it experienced. If a dog lived a life of fear or neglect, its transition is handled with extreme tenderness by spiritual guides who specialize in the restoration of the animal soul. They are taken to places of healing where the trauma of their physical existence is washed away by the light of the infinite. They are taught through a process of spiritual osmosis that they are safe and valued. Eventually, their original spark of joy is restored, and they are able to join the broader community of spirits. However, for the dog that was loved, the transition is instantaneous and joyful. It enters a realm that is a perfected version of the natural world. Imagine a landscape where the grass, the trees, and the water are all vibrating with a living intelligence. The dog is at home here, running with a freedom that is not hampered by age or disease. In this perfected environment, the dog continues to learn. The animal kingdom is not a dead end. It is a school for the soul. The dog learns to coordinate its will with the will of the creative forces. It begins to understand the interconnectedness of all life. It sees that its master is not a god, but a brother or sister in the Great Spirit, and it develops a deeper, more profound respect for the journey the human is taking. This realization does not diminish the dog's love. It expands it. The dog begins to see itself as a partner in the master's salvation. It understands that by being a source of joy and a recipient of love, it has helped the master develop the fruits of the spirit, which are necessary for the soul's eventual return to its source. This is why the presence of a dog in a person's life is often a sign of a soul that is working on the lessons of the heart. The dog's life is a constant prayer of action. In the spiritual world, this prayer is seen as a beautiful, glowing light. Every time a dog wagged its tail in greeting, every time it sat patiently by a sickbed, every time it offered comfort without being asked, it was weaving a garment of light. This garment is what it wears in the afterlife. It is a visible testament to the work it accomplished. This work is highly regarded in the halls of the spiritual government. There are specific beings whose task is to oversee the evolution of the animal kingdom, ensuring that no act of devotion goes unrewarded and no suffering goes uncompensated. The dog is a primary focus of these beings because of its unique capacity to bridge the gap between the material and the divine. The continuity of life is a fundamental law that governs every cell and every spark of consciousness in the universe. In the higher dimensions, the dog is not a mere memory of a past life, but a vibrant and participating member of the spiritual community. It moves with a grace and an agility that reflects the purity of its nature. The physical limitations that often plague a dog in its final years, the failing sight, the stiff joints, the heavy breath, are completely shed. In their place is a body of light that is the true blueprint of the animal's being. This light body is what the soul actually is. It is capable of experiencing a range of sensory delights that the physical world can only hint at. The colors are more vivid, the sounds are harmonious, and the sense of connection to the Earth's own spiritual essence is profound. The dog feels the heartbeat of the planet and the pulse of the stars as part of its own existence. It is no longer a separate creature fighting for survival, but a recognized part of the great I Am that flows through all things. This transformation is not just for the benefit of the animal. It serves as a profound lesson for the human souls who observe it. In the spiritual world, those who have passed on often visit the realms where the animals congregate. There is no hierarchy of worth, only a hierarchy of service. A person who may have been powerful on earth, but cold in heart finds themselves humbled by the radiant light of a dog that lived only to love. The dog becomes a teacher of the highest order. It demonstrates that the path to the divine is not found through complex theology or intellectual achievement, but through the simple, direct application of kindness. The dog is a living example of the commandment to love one's neighbor as oneself, for the dog makes no distinction between itself and the one it serves. This unity of spirit is the very goal of human evolution, and the dog achieves it naturally through its instinctual alignment with the creative forces. The energy of the dog in the spiritual world also plays a role in the maintenance of the astral environment. Just as plants on Earth provide oxygen for the atmosphere, the presence of pure, loving animal spirits provides a spiritual oxygen for the inner planes. Their vibrations help to neutralize the heavy, dark thoughts that human beings often broadcast into the ethers. The dog's naturally high vibration of joy and playfulness is a powerful antidote to the shadows of human doubt and fear. When a dog plays in the spiritual fields, it is actually performing a work of purification. It is breaking up stagnant energy and replacing it with the light of the infinite. This is why the afterlife is often described as a place of such immense peace. It is because the animal kingdom is there, constantly filtering and renewing the emotional atmosphere through their very being. They are the gardeners of the spirit, tending to the emotional landscapes of the higher worlds. On this work is part of a grander cycle of reincarnation and progression. The dog that has reached a high level of individualization through human love may eventually move beyond the need for a canine form. It may choose to stay in the spiritual realms as a guide for other animals, or it may eventually transition into a different level of consciousness altogether. But the bond with its human master remains the primary anchor. This bond is like a golden thread that can never be broken. It stretches across time and space, pulling the two together whenever there is a need for comfort or a moment of shared recognition. The love you gave to a dog was not a temporary emotional investment. It was a permanent addition to your own spiritual treasury. That love is waiting for you, magnified and purified, in the dimensions that lie just beyond your current physical perception. The dog's awareness of its own spiritual nature is a quiet, steady flame. It does not need to be told it is a child of God. It simply exists in that state of being. It knows that it came from the light and that it is returning to the light. This inherent certainty is what makes the dog such a stabilizing force in the lives of humans, who are often plagued by existential dread and uncertainty. By observing the dog, the human is meant to catch a glimpse of this divine confidence. The dog's life is a testament to the fact that the Creator cares for even the smallest of creatures, providing for their every need and ensuring their eternal safety. If the Father notices the fall of a sparrow, well, how much more does he cherish the devotion of a dog that has given its entire life to the service of a human soul? This realization is the beginning of a true spiritual awakening. The intricate web of life ensures that no experience of genuine connection is ever lost to the void of time. Every moment you spent nurturing the spirit of a dog was an act of co-creation with the divine. In the spiritual world, these moments are gathered like precious jewels, forming a treasury of light that belongs to your soul's heritage. The dog is the custodian of this treasury. It holds the memory of your capacity for kindness, even when you have forgotten it yourself. When you struggle with your own sense of worth, or when the shadows of the world seem to dim your inner light, the spiritual essence of the dog you loved acts as a silent witness to your goodness. It is a constant, pulsating reminder that you are capable of being a source of life and joy for another living being. This is the true meaning of the communion of saints, which includes all creatures that have lived in harmony with the laws of love. The destiny of the dog is to be a companion in the fullest sense of the word, one who shares the bread of life and the journey of the soul. In the higher realms, this companionship is stripped of the misunderstandings and the limitations of the physical brain. You will find that the communication between you and the animals you have loved is instantaneous and complete. There is a deep mutual recognition of the roles you played for each other. Well, you will see how their presence helped to soften the hard edges of your character, and they will see how your care provided the heat necessary for their own spiritual budding. This is the peaceable kingdom described in ancient visions, where the lion lies down with the lamb, and a little child shall lead them. It is a state of consciousness where the predatory instincts of the lower nature have been completely transmuted into the creative energies of the spirit. And now the question turns toward you. You have walked through the hidden corridors of the spiritual world and seen the profound destiny of the companions who share your home. But have you considered the weight of the responsibility you carry? If the dog's very soul is shaped and individualized by your touch, what kind of architect have you been? Are you providing a foundation of peace and consistent love? Or are you projecting your own unresolved chaos onto a creature that has no choice but to absorb it? The animals in your life are not background scenery in the drama of your existence. They are spiritual barometers of your own progress. If you cannot practice the presence of God with the dog at your feet, how do you expect to find it in the high cathedrals of your mind? Think deeply about the silent eyes that watch you every day. They are seeing more than your physical actions. They are sensing the vibration of your soul. Are you living a life that is worthy of such absolute, uncritical devotion? If your dog were to stand before the Creator as the sole witness of your character, what testimony would its spirit give? Would it speak of a master who was a reflection of the divine mercy? Or would it bear the marks of a soul too busy, too cold, or too distracted to notice a miracle in fur? The mission of your life is not found in the things you accumulate, but in the quality of the love you leave behind in the hearts of those you touched, including the least of these. Are you fulfilling your mission as a steward of the life force entrusted to you? Or are you wasting the opportunity to develop the Christ spirit through the simple daily acts of care that these creatures require? The clock of your physical life is ticking, and every interaction is a brushstroke on the canvas of your eternity. When you finally step out of your physical shell and enter the light, will you be met by a chorus of joyful recognition? Or will there be a void where a bond of love should have been? The choices you make today are echoing in the spiritual world right now. Do not wait until the silver cord is loosened to realize that you were walking among angels in disguise. What will you change in your heart today to honor the sacred trust of the life that looks up to you for guidance? As you reflect on these truths, remember that the bond of love is the only thing you truly take with you. If this message has touched your spirit and opened your eyes to the deeper reality of the animal kingdom, consider sharing this perspective with others who may be searching for comfort or meaning. Your insights and your personal journey are a vital part of this unfolding story of universal connection. Edgar Cayce was an American born in 1877 who, over the course of several decades, entered states of deep trance and produced over 14,000 documented readings, covering topics ranging from physical healing to the nature of the soul, from life after death to the purpose of human existence. He is widely considered the father of holistic medicine and a pioneer in the study of human consciousness. This video was created based on the extensive study of his documented readings and the timeless spiritual truths he brought to light. The Master did not simply walk the earth to be worshipped. He came to demonstrate a mathematical certainty of the soul's potential that most modern traditions have completely obscured. The records of existence reveal that the man known as Jesus was the culmination of a vast, intentional journey through the earth's history, appearing in various forms to perfect the very patterns of human error we struggle with today. This is not a story of a distant deity, but of a brother who paved a literal energetic path through the physical dimensions so that we might follow. Understanding his true trajectory across time changes the Bible from a book of ancient morals into a precise technical manual for your own spiritual evolution. If you have ever felt that the traditional narrative of his life leaves a void in your understanding of why you are here, the sequence of his appearances provides the missing key. Share your current perspective on the relationship between the human and the divine in the comments below. To understand the nature of the Christ, one must first dismantle the illusion that the appearance of Jesus in Palestine was an isolated event or a sudden intervention by a distant creator. The reality is far more intricate and purposeful. Before the foundations of what we call the physical world were solidified, there was a movement of spirit, a collective of souls who sought to express their individuality within the realms of form. Among these was the one who would become the Master, functioning from the beginning as a blueprint for the return to unity. This essence did not simply arrive 2,000 years ago. It had been weaving itself into the fabric of human experience through a series of intentional incarnations, each designed to master a specific law of the earthly plane. This was the preparation of the vessel. The soul that became Jesus was the same soul that stood as Adam, the first to fully involve itself in the material world, and through that involvement, the first to experience the separation from the source. This is the profound paradox. The one who would save humanity was the one who first led the way into the density of flesh, taking upon himself the full weight of the human condition from its inception. It was a journey of thousands of years, a slow and deliberate reclaiming of the light through the very corridors of darkness that we inhabit. This process followed a strict evolutionary logic. The path required the soul to inhabit various roles throughout history to balance the creative and destructive forces of the mind. In the ancient lands of Atlantis, this soul worked to preserve the law of the One, standing against the rising tide of materialism and the misuse of spiritual energies. Later, as Enoch and Melchizedek, the same essence anchored the concepts of justice, peace, and the timeless priesthood of the Spirit, establishing the spiritual infrastructure that would eventually support the final manifestation. Each life was a refinement, a specific laboratory of experience where the laws of cause and effect were met and transcended. The man Jesus was the result of a soul finally reaching a state of perfect equilibrium where the individual will was no longer in conflict with the universal will. He did not achieve this by divine decree alone, but by the sweat and struggle of countless lifetimes, making him not just a savior to be praised, but a pattern to be replicated. The cross was not just a historical event. It was the final atmospheric pressure required to transform a human soul into a permanent bridge between dimensions. This bridge was built upon the understanding that the body is a temple, not in a metaphorical sense, but in a literal, biological sense. The Master understood the glandular system and the spiritual centers of the human frame better than any modern physician. He knew that the forces of the soul are directed through the physical centers, the plexuses and the endocrine glands, and that the purification of these centers is what allows the Christ consciousness to rise. His life was a demonstration of how a human being, born of woman and subject to all the temptations and physical limitations of the flesh, could systematically align their internal vibrations with the frequency of the infinite. This alignment is what turned the water into wine and the dead into the living. It was not a violation of natural law, but the application of a higher natural law that remains accessible to any soul that follows the same structural path. The sequence of his lives shows that perfection is not a gift given at birth, but a mountain climbed through persistent effort. He walked the path of the artisan, the priest, the king, and the sufferer, encompassing the totality of human experience so that no soul could ever say their specific burden was unknown to him. The bond between the human and the divine is not a matter of belief, but a matter of attunement. The master functioned as a living tuning fork for the human race. By observing his trajectory, we see that the fall of man was not a single act of disobedience in a garden, but a gradual descent into the belief that we are separate from our source. The mission of the Christ soul was to enter that state of perceived separation and live so perfectly within it that the illusion was shattered from the inside out. This required an absolute mastery of the mind, for the mind is the builder. Every thought held by the master was a brick in the construction of a new reality for humanity. He did not just teach about love, he manifested the vibratory rate of love, in which is the only force capable of neutralizing the karma accumulated over millennia of selfish desire. This is why the record of his life is so vital. It is the evidence that the laws of the universe can be mastered from within a physical body. The preparation for the final appearance in Palestine was not merely a series of lives, but a systematic anchoring of spiritual laws into the physical history of the planet. Each step in this sequence served as a foundation for the next, creating a spiritual architecture that would eventually support the full weight of the Christ consciousness. When this soul appeared as Joseph in the land of Egypt, it was to master the application of spiritual law within the context of governance and material abundance. It was a test of the heart's purity while holding the sad of a nation in its hands, and the lessons learned in the pits of betrayal and the heights of power were necessary to temper the soul for the ultimate sacrifice. This was not a random sequence of events, but a deliberate training ground. The soul was learning to balance the creative forces of the mind with the practical needs of the physical world. It was demonstrating that a human being could remain connected to the source while navigating the most complex social and political structures of the time. The patterns were being set. The vibrations were being raised. The memory of the soul was being filled with the diverse experiences of human suffering and triumph, ensuring that when the time came for the final mission, there would be no aspect of the human condition left unexperienced. This soul also appeared as Joshua, the one who led the people into the promised land. This was a phase of the journey focused on the mastery of the physical through the spiritual will. It was about the direct application of divine power to overcome material obstacles. Yet even in these roles, the soul was still in the process of refining its own alignment. The path of the Christ is not a straight line of perfection, but a spiral of increasing awareness. Each incarnation addressed a different facet of the ego, slowly dissolving the boundaries between the personal self and the universal spirit. The evolution of this soul is the story of humanity's own potential. It shows that the capacity to channel the divine is built through the patient application of law over time. There are no shortcuts in the spiritual realm. The man Jesus reached the state of Christhood because he had already been every one of us, who he had known the sting of failure, the weight of responsibility, and the slow, arduous process of spiritual growth. This is why his life resonates so deeply within the collective subconscious of the race. It is a memory of our own future, a mirror of the path we are all currently walking, whether we recognize it or not. The transition from the old law to the new was not a rejection of the past, but a fulfillment of it. The Master came to reveal that the laws governing the stars and the seasons are the same laws governing the human soul. He understood that the energy we call God is not a person in the sky, but a living, breathing force that permeates every cell of our being. To align with this force is to enter into a state of grace where the limitations of the material world begin to dissolve. The miracles were not breaks in the laws of physics. They were the result of a mind that had reached such a high state of vibration that it could reorganize matter at will. This level of mastery is the natural inheritance of every soul, but it remains dormant as long as we remain trapped in the belief of our own separation. The soul that became Jesus spent ages breaking that belief, layer by layer, until only the light of the Creator remained. This light is what we call the Christ. It is a universal principle, a state of being that was perfectly manifested in the man Jesus, so that we might have a tangible example of what is possible. The records indicate that during the hidden years of his life, the man Jesus traveled extensively, returning to the ancient centers of wisdom where his soul had previously labored. He went to Egypt, to India, and went to Persia, not necessarily to learn new truths, but to reactivate the spiritual connections established in his former incarnations. He was closing the loops of history. He was gathering the fragments of the ancient mysteries and uniting them into a single, cohesive path of love and sacrifice. This was the final assembly of the blueprint. By visiting the pyramids and the temples of the East, he was literally walking through the memories of his own past lives as Hermes and others who had brought light to those regions. He was harmonizing the spiritual currents of the entire planet within his own physical body. This internal synthesis was what allowed him to stand at the Jordan and receive the full descent of the Spirit. It was the moment when the individual soul of the man Jesus was completely subsumed by the universal Christ consciousness. From that point forward, he was no longer a man seeking God, but God manifesting as man. This manifestation required a level of physical and mental discipline that is almost incomprehensible to the modern mind. Every cell of his body had to be vibrating at a frequency that could sustain the presence of the infinite. This was achieved through years of meditation, prayer, and the conscious direction of the life force through the spiritual centers. He was practicing the very techniques he would later teach to his followers in secret. The way he spoke of was a literal method of transformation, a way to raise the internal energies of the body to meet the descending light of the Spirit. He knew that without this physical preparation, the human frame would be shattered by the power of the divine presence. His life was a testament to the fact that the spiritual path is a total commitment of the body, mind, and soul. It is not enough to have a correct belief. One must become a living conduit for the truth. The culmination of this vast preparation was not found in the miracles, but in the garden and on the hill. It was the final test of the soul's ability to maintain its vibration of love while being subjected to the maximum density of human hatred and physical agony. The master knew that to truly pave the path for the rest of humanity, he had to go through the portal of death without losing the connection to the life force. This was the ultimate purpose of his long journey through time. He was not just paying a debt, he was breaking a physical law. By maintaining his alignment with the One while his body was being destroyed, he created a permanent rupture in the veil of the material world. He demonstrated that the spirit is not a byproduct of the body, but its master. This event was the anchor point for a new era of human consciousness, providing a literal, energetic map for every soul that would follow. The resurrection was the proof of the experiment. It showed that a human soul, having mastered the laws of the physical plane through many lifetimes of effort, could now manipulate the very atoms of the body to move between dimensions at will. This is the destiny of all who align themselves with the pattern he set. This pattern is encoded in the very structure of our spiritual anatomy. We are told that we are made in the image of the Creator, but we often fail to realize that this image is not a physical shape, but a set of spiritual laws and potentials. The Master's life was a demonstration of these laws in action. He showed that the mind is the builder, the physical is the result, and the spirit is the life. When these three are in harmony, the human becomes a co-creator with the infinite. The teachings he left behind were not meant to be dogmas, but practical instructions for achieving this state of harmony. He spoke of the need for the eye to be single, referring to the activation of the spiritual vision that transcends the dualities of the material world. He spoke of the bread of life, referring to the spiritual energy that sustains the soul. Every word was a technical description of a spiritual reality. The kingdom of heaven he described was not a place in the clouds, but a state of consciousness that is available right here, right now, to anyone willing to do the internal work of purification. The cross itself was the symbol of the intersection between the horizontal plane of material existence and the vertical plane of spiritual reality. By choosing to remain at that intersection, the Master anchored the divine presence into the very earth. This was the final act of the soul that had once been Adam. The cycle was complete. The one who first entered the flesh had now perfectly spiritualized the flesh. This achievement was not for him alone, but for the entire human race. It created a shift in the collective consciousness of the planet, making it easier for every other soul to make the same connection. We are now living in the wake of that event. We're moving toward a time when the realization of our own divine nature will become the dominant reality of our existence. The path has been cleared. The obstacles have been identified. The map has been drawn in the life of the one who became the Christ. All that remains is for each individual soul to choose to walk that path for themselves. The work of the Master continues in the unseen realms as he remains the high priest of the human soul, guiding the evolution of the race from the higher dimensions. He is not a distant figure to be worshipped from afar, but a living presence that is as close as our own breath. The connection to this presence is made through the application of the laws of love and service. As we begin to lose ourselves in the service of others, we find that the same Christ consciousness that moved through him begins to move through us. This is the true meaning of being a follower of the way. It is not about adhering to a set of beliefs, but about becoming a conduit for the same light that he manifested. The journey through the ages has brought us to this point where the opportunity for total spiritual transformation is within our reach. The history of the soul is a long and complex one, but it leads to a single, simple conclusion. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, and our ultimate purpose is to return to the source from which we came. And now the question turns toward you. For how much longer will you treat the life of the Master as a distant historical drama rather than the urgent blueprint for your own survival? Will you have listened to the account of a soul that labored for thousands of years to perfect itself, yet you often live as if your current choices have no lasting consequence? If the man who became the Christ had to endure the fires of multiple incarnations, the discipline of the ancient mysteries, and the ultimate surrender of the ego to achieve his mission, what makes you believe that your mission can be fulfilled through passive belief or casual spiritual interest? The path is not a suggestion, it is a structural necessity of the universe. Every moment you spend in the pursuit of temporary material security at the expense of your spiritual alignment is a moment you are adding to the weight of your own journey through time. What you must look into the mirror of this vast spiritual history and ask yourself, what is the actual vibration of my life? If your thoughts are the builders of your future reality, what kind of world are you constructing with the materials of your current resentment, your hidden fears, and your relentless focus on the self? The Master showed that the mind is the only tool capable of bridging the gap between the animal and the divine. Yet you often use yours as a weapon for your own defense or a shovel for your own grave. You have been given the same biological temple, the same glandular system, and the same access to the infinite that he used to conquer death. But you treat these instruments with a casual indifference that borders on the profane. Is your life a reflection of the light? Or is it a shadow cast by the weight of your own desires? The journey of the soul through the ages is not a theory to be debated. It is a ledger being written in the very cells of your body. Every act of selfishness, every refusal to forgive, and every moment of spiritual cowardice is a debt that you will eventually have to meet. There is no escape from the law of cause and effect that the Master so perfectly demonstrated and then transcended. You cannot claim to follow the way while refusing to take up the cross of your own character flaws. To truly see the Bible and the life of Jesus through this lens is to realize that you are currently in the middle of your own long cycle of evolution, and the choices you make today are either accelerating your return to the source or binding you more tightly to the cycles of the material world. Are you here to fulfill a mission, or are you merely a tourist in the physical dimension, distracted by the sights and sounds of a temporary reality? Consider the silence of your own heart when you are alone with your thoughts. In that silence, do you feel the pull of the infinite, or do you feel the panic of a soul that knows it is wasting its most precious resource? Time. The Master did not come to save you from your sins in a way that allows you to remain unchanged. He came to show you that your sins are the very chains you have forged for yourself, and only you can break them by aligning your will with the divine. This is the hard truth that most modern traditions avoid. The responsibility for your spiritual state rests entirely upon your own shoulders. No amount of ritual or profession of faith can replace the systematic purification of the mind and body. If you were to leave this physical plane tonight, Would you be able to stand in the presence of that perfect vibration of love? Or would the frequency of your own life be so discordant that you would seek the darkness of the lower realms once again? The path of the Christ is a narrow one, not because God is restrictive, but because the laws of physics and spirit are precise. You cannot carry the baggage of your ego through the eye of the needle. What are you holding on to so tightly that you are willing to sacrifice your spiritual inheritance for it? Is it your pride, your need to be right, or your attachment to the comforts of a life that is passing away even as you read these words? The record of the soul's journey is clear. Eventually, everything that is not of the spirit will be stripped away. You can choose to release it now through a conscious act of will, or you can wait until the laws of life force you to let go. This is the challenge that the life of the Master presents to every human being. It is a call to total transformation, starting with the very next thought you think and the very next action you take. What is the one thing in your life that you know is blocking your spiritual progress, yet you refuse to surrender? Why do you continue to seek meaning in the things that have no power to sustain your soul? If you were truly living your mission, what would have to change in your daily routine, your relationships, and your inner dialogue? Are you brave enough to confront the reality that you may be the only thing standing in the way of your own salvation? These questions have no easy exit. They require an honesty that few are willing to practice. But it is only through this honesty that the door to the Christ consciousness can be opened. The map has been provided. The way has been cleared. The power is available. The only variable that remains is your own will. Will you continue to wander in the wilderness of your own making? Or will you finally begin the ascent to the promised land that is your birthright? Please share this message with someone who is currently seeking their true purpose, as the act of sharing light is the first step in expanding your own. Edgar Cayce was an American born in 1877 who, over the course of several decades, entered into deep states of trance and produced more than 14,000 documented readings covering subjects ranging from physical healing to the nature of the soul, the afterlife, and the spiritual purpose of human existence. This video was created based on the extensive studies of those readings, offering a glimpse into the profound spiritual architecture they reveal.
Have you ever watched your dog suddenly freeze, stare intensely at an empty corner of your living room, and then start barking frantically at absolutely nothing? You look around, see nothing there, maybe even walk over to investigate, but your dog continues acting like there's an invisible intruder in your home. What if I told you that according to Edgar Cayce, the most documented psychic in American history, your dog isn't barking at nothing at all? In this video, I'm going to reveal exactly what Edgar Cayce discovered about animal perception during his 14,000 documented psychic readings conducted right here in Virginia Beach. You'll learn why your pet can see spiritual entities that you cannot, the specific reading where Cayce explained animal sensitivity to the spirit world, and the shocking truth about what's really happening in your home when your dog starts acting strange. But first, let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed that your dog seems to know when someone is about to visit before they even knock on the door? Or maybe your cat stares at empty spaces for minutes at a time, following something invisible with their eyes. If you've experienced this, you're not alone and you're about to understand why. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, conducted over 14,000 psychic readings between 1901 and 1945 from his home base in Virginia Beach, Virginia. During these readings, while in a deep trance state, Cayce accessed what he called the Akashic Records, a spiritual database containing all knowledge of past, present, and future events. What makes Cayce's work remarkable isn't just the volume of his readings, but their documented accuracy, and the fact that they were all recorded by stenographers and preserved by the Association for Research and Enlightenment. But wait, here's where it gets fascinating for pet owners. In reading 262-103, conducted in 1943, Cayce was asked specifically about animal perception and their ability to sense spiritual presences. His response would change how we understand our pets forever. Cayce explained that animals, particularly dogs and cats, maintain what he called an unbroken connection to the spiritual realm, because they haven't developed the rational mind barriers that humans create as they mature. Think of it this way. When you were a child, you might have had imaginary friends or claimed to see things that adults couldn't see. Your parents probably told you it was just your imagination, and over time, you learn to suppress these perceptions. Animals never go through this process. They retain their spiritual sensitivity throughout their entire lives. Here's what Cayce revealed in that same reading that will shock you. He stated that dogs can see the auras of both living people and spiritual entities. When your dog barks at what appears to be nothing, they're actually responding to the energy field of a spirit or deceased person who has entered your space. The barking isn't fear necessarily. It's your dog's way of announcing the presence and determining whether this spiritual visitor poses any threat to their family. But this raises an incredible question that I'll answer in just 2 minutes. If spirits are visiting our homes regularly enough that our dogs notice them, who are these spirits and why are they there? Cayce's readings reveal something even more profound about pet behavior that most people never consider. In reading 57551, he explained that animals serve as spiritual guardians for their human families. They're not just companions, they're actually protecting you from negative spiritual influences while welcoming positive ones. This is why some dogs bark aggressively at empty spaces, while others simply observe quietly, or even wag their tails at invisible visitors. During his readings, Cayce frequently mentioned that deceased family members often visit their living relatives, especially during times of stress, illness, or major life changes. Your grandmother who passed away 5 years ago might be checking in on you, and your dog is the only family member who can actually see her standing in your kitchen. This explains why dogs often bark at specific locations in homes where people have died, or why they refuse to enter certain rooms. They're not sensing ghosts in the horror movie sense. They're perceiving the spiritual imprints and energy patterns that remain in these spaces. But here's something that will blow your mind about what Cayce discovered regarding cats versus dogs and their different spiritual abilities. In reading 294-128, Cayce explained that while dogs are primarily protective spiritual guardians, cats serve as what he called spiritual purifiers. Cats can actually absorb negative spiritual energy from their environment and transform it. This is why cats often sleep in places where people have been sick or emotionally distressed. They're literally cleaning the spiritual atmosphere of your home. Cayce revealed that cats can see spiritual entities that even dogs cannot perceive. In ancient Egypt, which Cayce described extensively in his past life readings, cats were revered as sacred animals precisely because of their superior spiritual vision. They could see and interact with spiritual beings from higher dimensions that other animals couldn't access. This explains why your cat might stare intensely at empty spaces for extended periods without showing any fear or alarm. They're not just seeing spirits of deceased humans, they're observing spiritual teachers, angels and guides who are present to help the family, but operating at frequencies too high for most other animals to detect. Here's a documented case from 1944 that perfectly illustrates this difference between cat and dog spiritual perception. A family in Richmond contacted Edgar Cayce because their dog would bark frantically at their hallway every night, while their cat would simply sit calmly in the same spot, purring. During reading 1653-2, Cayce revealed that a deceased grandfather was visiting nightly, and while the dog could see his spirit and was announcing his presence protectively, the cat could see both the grandfather and the guardian angel who accompanied him. The cat's purring indicated that she was responding to the angel's high spiritual vibration. Here's where Cayce's teachings get even more remarkable, and this will completely change how you view your pet's behavior. In reading 1456-1, Cayce described how animals can see what he called thought forms. These are spiritual manifestations created by intense human emotions or repeated behaviors. If someone in your family is going through severe depression, anxiety, or anger, these emotions create actual visible energy patterns that your dog can perceive. This is why pets often become restless or behave differently when there's emotional turmoil in the household, even if no one is expressing these feelings outwardly. But wait, there's something even more incredible that Cayce revealed about animal perception. Cayce taught that some animals, particularly those with strong bonds to their human families, can actually see into the future. In reading 294-136, He explained that dogs might bark at empty spaces because they're seeing spiritual events that haven't happened yet but are approaching. Your dog might be barking because they sense that someone who will visit tomorrow is already beginning to project their energy toward your home. This ability isn't supernatural, according to Cayce. It's natural spiritual perception that humans once possessed but have largely lost due to our focus on material rather than spiritual reality. Animals never lost this gift because they remain connected to what Cayce called the universal consciousness. Now here's the reading that shocked even Cayce's stenographer when she recorded it. In 1944, during reading 1947-3, Cayce was asked about a family dog that had been barking every night at 3 a.m. for several weeks, always staring at the same corner of the master bedroom. Cayce revealed that the dog was seeing the spirit of the woman's deceased father, who was trying to warn the family about a health issue that would affect the husband within 6 months. The family took the warning seriously, had medical tests performed, and discovered an early-stage condition that was successfully treated because of the early detection. This wasn't an isolated incident. The ARE archives contain dozens of similar readings where Cayce explained animal behavior as spiritual communication or protection. But here's what this means for you and your relationship with your pet right now. When your dog barks at nothing instead of dismissing their behavior, Cayce would suggest paying attention to several factors. First, notice the time of day. Spiritual activity tends to be stronger during what Cayce called the quiet hours, typically between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. when the veil between dimensions is thinnest. Second, observe your dog's body language. Are they fearful, protective, or simply alert? This can tell you whether the spiritual presence is negative, neutral, or positive. Cayce also recommended that pet owners develop their own spiritual sensitivity through meditation and prayer. In reading 262-104, he explained that humans can learn to perceive some of what their animals see by quieting their rational minds and opening their spiritual awareness. Here's a practical technique Cayce suggested during multiple readings for enhancing spiritual perception. Sit quietly with your pet when they're alert to spiritual activity. Place your hand gently on their head or back and try to sense what they're experiencing. Don't try to see anything. Just feel for changes in energy or temperature in the room. Many people who practice this technique regularly report beginning to sense spiritual presences themselves. But there's something even more profound that Cayce taught about the spiritual connection between humans and animals. In reading 57552, Cayce revealed that pets often choose their human families before birth. On a spiritual level, because they have a mission to help their humans grow spiritually. Your dog isn't just barking at spirits randomly, they're fulfilling their spiritual purpose as a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds, for your benefit. This means that every time your pet alerts you to spiritual activity, they're providing you with an opportunity to expand your own consciousness and spiritual awareness. They're literally trying to help you remember abilities you once had, but have forgotten. Cayce taught that this spiritual partnership between humans and animals will become increasingly important as humanity evolves spiritually. Animals will serve as teachers, helping humans reconnect with their natural psychic abilities and spiritual perception. Now, here's what Cayce said would happen to people who begin paying attention to their pets' spiritual alerts. In reading 1152 and 11, he explained that humans who acknowledge and respect their animals' spiritual perceptions will begin developing their own psychic abilities more rapidly. This includes increased intuition, better ability to sense other people's emotions and intentions, and even prophetic dreams. The key is to approach your pet's spiritual sensitivity with respect and curiosity rather than skepticism or dismissal. When your dog barks at nothing, thank them for protecting the family and ask mentally for any message or guidance that the spiritual visitor might have for you. Here's a documented case from the ARE archives that illustrates this perfectly. A woman from Norfolk, Virginia, contacted Edgar Cayce in 1943 because her collie had been exhibiting strange behavior for months. The dog would sit by the front door every evening at sunset and whine softly while staring at the door. During reading 1876-1, Cayce revealed that the dog was seeing the spirit of her son who had been killed in World War II. The son was visiting every evening to let his mother know he was safe and at peace in the spirit world. Once the woman understood this and began acknowledging her son's visits by speaking to him aloud, the dog's behavior changed from anxious whining to calm, peaceful sitting by the door. This illustrates Cayce's teaching that spiritual communication often requires human participation and acknowledgement to be complete. But here's the most incredible part of Cayce's teachings about animal spiritual perception. He revealed that some pets are actually reincarnated spiritual guides who have chosen to return in animal form to help specific humans through challenging life periods. In reading 524-2, Cayce explained that a woman's devoted German shepherd had been her spiritual teacher in a previous lifetime and had returned as her pet to continue guiding and protecting her. This doesn't mean all pets are reincarnated humans, but Cayce taught that the souls who become our most devoted animal companions often have deep spiritual connections to us that span multiple lifetimes. When you think about your own pet's personality and the way they seem to understand your emotions and needs, this teaching suddenly makes perfect sense. They're not just intelligent animals, they're spiritual beings on their own evolutionary journey, temporarily inhabiting animal bodies to serve and learn. Here's what this means for how you should respond when your pet detects spiritual activity. First, trust their perception completely. Cayce was clear that animals don't have hallucinations or imagination in the way humans do. If they're reacting to something, that something is really there, even if you can't perceive it yet. Second, use these moments as opportunities for your own spiritual development. Ask yourself what message or lesson this spiritual activity might have for you. Are you going through a difficult time where you need guidance or protection? Are there deceased loved ones who might be trying to communicate with you? Third, express gratitude to both your pet and any spiritual visitors. Cayce taught that gratitude raises spiritual vibration and makes positive spiritual communication more likely. Here's the most practical advice Cayce gave for pet owners who want to understand their animal's spiritual experiences better. In reading 294-140, he recommended keeping a simple journal noting when your pet exhibits spiritual alertness. Record the date, time, location in your home, your pet's specific behavior, and any significant events happening in your life or family at that time. Over several months, patterns will emerge that will help you understand what types of spiritual activity your pet is detecting and why. Many families who have followed this practice report discovering that their pets consistently alert them to spiritual activity during times when they most need spiritual guidance or protection. But here's what Edgar Cayce predicted about the future of human-animal spiritual relationships. In his prophetic readings about the coming spiritual awakening of humanity, Cayce foresaw a time when humans would regain their natural spiritual perceptions and work consciously with animals as spiritual partners. He predicted that people would learn to communicate telepathically with their pets and that animals would serve as spiritual counselors and healers for their human families. This isn't science fiction, according to Cayce. It's humanity returning to spiritual abilities we once possessed and will possess again as we evolve spiritually. The next time your dog barks at nothing, remember that according to the most documented psychic in American history, they're seeing something very real that you simply can't perceive yet. They're fulfilling their spiritual purpose as your guardian and guide, trying to help you become aware of the spiritual dimensions that surround you every day. Your pet isn't just a companion. They're a spiritual teacher, protector, and bridge to the unseen world. When you begin to understand and appreciate this role, both you and your pet will experience a deeper, more meaningful relationship that extends far beyond the physical realm. But here's one final revelation from Edgar Cayce that will transform how you see every interaction with your pet. In reading 57553, conducted just months before Cayce's death in 1945, he revealed that pets serve as spiritual messengers between the living and those who have passed on. When deceased family members want to communicate love, guidance, or important information to their living relatives, they often work through the family pet, because animals can serve as clear, uncomplicated channels for spiritual communication. This means that your dog's barking at invisible presences might actually be facilitating conversations between you and departed loved ones. Your pet is helping to maintain family bonds that transcend physical death, ensuring that love and guidance continue to flow between dimensions. Cayce taught that this spiritual messenger role will become increasingly important as more people begin to understand that death is simply a transition to a different state of consciousness, not an ending of relationships or caring. If you've lost someone close to you and your pet has exhibited unusual behavior since their passing, consider the possibility that your furry family member is helping that person stay connected to you. The barking, staring, or unusual alertness isn't random. It's purposeful spiritual communication, facilitated by your pet's natural psychic abilities. Edgar Cayce's teachings remind us that the spiritual world isn't separate from our daily lives. It's interwoven with everything we experience. Our pets are living proof of this truth, serving as constant reminders that there's much more to reality than what our physical eyes can see. So the next time your dog starts barking at an empty corner, instead of telling them to be quiet, take a moment to appreciate that you're witnessing a miracle. You're seeing a spiritual being, acknowledging other spiritual beings, all in service of love, protection, and guidance for your family. This is the profound truth Edgar Cayce revealed about what your dog actually sees when they bark at nothing. They see everything your rational mind has learned to filter out, and they're trying to help you remember how to see it too. Have you ever been touched by someone who died in your dreams and felt it was more than just your imagination? Edgar Cayce, America's most documented psychic with over 14,000 readings, issued a startling warning about these encounters that will completely change how you understand the spirit world and your own consciousness. What I'm about to share with you comes directly from Cayce's archived readings at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, not from speculation or fiction. These are documented cases that shocked even his stenographer Gladys Davis, who recorded every word for over 40 years. Before we dive deep, I need to ask you something crucial. Have you ever had a dream where a deceased loved one touched you, and you woke up feeling like it actually happened? Drop a comment below, because what you're about to discover might explain experiences you've dismissed as mere dreams. Today, you'll uncover 3 revelations from Cayce's readings that will transform your understanding of consciousness. First, why the deceased appear in dreams and what they're actually trying to communicate. Second, the specific warning Cayce gave about certain types of spiritual contact that can drain your life force. And third, the protective methods he recommended that thousands have used successfully since the 1930s. Edgar Cayce didn't just theorize about these encounters. He experienced them himself and documented the spiritual mechanics behind them in readings like 136-18 and 2629. What he discovered challenges everything mainstream psychology teaches about dreams and opens a window into dimensions of consciousness most people never realize exist. But here's what Cayce revealed that changes everything about how we understand death and dreams. The consciousness doesn't simply cease when the physical body dies. Instead, according to reading 1472-2, the soul continues in what he called the interplanetary sojourns, existing in dimensions that occasionally intersect with our dream state. Cayce explained in reading 5756-4 that dreams serve as a bridge between the physical and spiritual dimensions. When we sleep, our conscious mind steps aside, allowing our subconscious to tune into frequencies normally blocked during waking hours. This is when contact with discarnate entities becomes possible. Wait, there's something even more significant here. Cayce distinguished between 2 types of dream encounters with the deceased. The first type involves genuine communication from loved ones who have passed, usually carrying messages of comfort or guidance. These encounters, according to reading 136-83, feel peaceful and often provide specific information the dreamer couldn't have known otherwise. But here's where Cayce's warning becomes crucial, and this will shock you about the darker side of spiritual contact. The second type involves what he called earthbound spirits, or entities that haven't properly transitioned to higher dimensions. In reading 5756-12, Cayce explained these entities can attach to living people through dream contact, gradually draining their vital energy. Let me share a documented case that illustrates this perfectly. In 1936, a woman from Norfolk, Virginia sought Cayce's help after experiencing recurring dreams where her deceased husband would embrace her. Initially comforting, these encounters began leaving her exhausted and depressed. Cayce's reading 1151-5 revealed her husband's spirit was earthbound, unable to progress spiritually, and was unconsciously drawing energy from her to maintain his attachment to the physical plane. This reading changed everything about how spiritual counselors understand posthumous attachments. Cayce explained that some souls, particularly those who died suddenly or with strong earthly attachments, can become confused in the afterlife dimensions. Instead of moving toward the light and spiritual progression, they remain close to the earth plane, seeking familiar energy patterns. Here's what makes this even more alarming, and I'll show you the documented solution in just a moment. These earthbound entities don't intentionally harm the living, but their need for energy creates what Cayce called a psychic drain. People experiencing these encounters often report feeling tired upon waking, experiencing mood changes, or having difficulty concentrating during the day. The documented case of Mrs. Helen Morrison from Richmond provides a perfect example. After her son died in World War II, she began having dreams where he would hold her hand and refuse to let go. Reading 37442 revealed her son's spirit was trying to remain connected to his mother rather than accepting his transition. Cayce's reading provided specific instructions that not only helped her son's spirit progress, but restored her own vitality. But wait, there's something crucial Cayce discovered about the timing of these encounters that most people completely miss. According to reading 2628, spirits of the recently deceased often attempt contact within the first 40 days after death. This period, which Cayce called the adjustment phase, represents the soul's gradual awakening to its new state of existence. During this adjustment phase, the deceased may not fully understand their condition. They attempt to communicate through the most accessible channel available, which is often the dream state of someone they loved deeply. Reading 1152-3 documents how a father appeared to his daughter repeatedly, trying to tell her where he had hidden important family documents. Only after she found the papers and acknowledged his message did the visit cease. This changes everything about how we should respond to these dream encounters. Cayce emphasized in reading 5756-9 that our attitude and spiritual preparation determines whether these contacts become helpful or harmful. When we approach them with fear or excessive grief, we create an energy pattern that can trap the deceased spirit in lower dimensions. Here's the shocking part that even surprised Cayce himself. In reading 14728, he discovered that our emotional reactions during these dream encounters directly affect the spiritual progression of the deceased. Excessive grief or fear can actually hold back a soul's natural evolution, while love and spiritual understanding help them move forward. Let me share the documented case that proves this principle works. Margaret Thompson of Virginia Beach lost her husband in 1941 and began having nightly dreams where he appeared distressed and reached out to touch her. Following Cayce's guidance from reading 1158-12, she began responding to these dreams with prayer and mental affirmations of love and release. Within 2 weeks, her husband appeared one final time, looking peaceful and surrounded by light, to say goodbye. But here's what Cayce revealed about the protective methods that will completely change how you handle these encounters. The key lies in spiritual preparation before sleep and maintaining what he called a proper attunement with divine forces. Cayce recommended in reading 281-13 a specific bedtime routine for people experiencing unwanted spiritual contact. First, a period of prayer or meditation to raise your spiritual vibration. Second, the mental affirmation that only the highest spiritual influences may approach you during sleep. Third, surrounding yourself mentally with white light and calling upon your spiritual guides for protection. The documented effectiveness of these methods is remarkable. A study conducted by the Association for Research and Enlightenment in 1958 tracked 43 individuals who implemented Cayce's protective protocols. Within 30 days, 87% reported either the complete cessation of disturbing spiritual encounters or their transformation into peaceful, beneficial communications. Wait, there's an even more powerful aspect to Cayce's teachings that connects these dream encounters to your spiritual evolution. According to reading 57496, contact with deceased souls can accelerate your own psychic development if approached correctly. These encounters serve as training grounds for expanding consciousness and developing spiritual sensitivity. Cayce explained that each genuine spiritual contact during dreams provides an opportunity to practice telepathic communication, energy sensitivity, and discernment between different types of spiritual influences. Reading 26215 documents how regular dream communication with spiritually advanced souls can enhance your intuitive abilities and deepen your understanding of metaphysical principles. Here's where this becomes practically transformative for your spiritual journey. Cayce taught that learning to communicate safely with discarnate souls prepares you for accessing higher spiritual dimensions, including what he called the Akashic records. The same sensitivity required for dream communication with the deceased develops into the ability to access universal knowledge and guidance. But there's a warning here that could save you from serious spiritual complications. Cayce emphasized in reading 57567 that attempting to force or seek out these encounters through seances or occult practices opens doorways to lower spiritual entities that can cause significant problems. The healthiest approach allows natural contact while maintaining strong spiritual boundaries. Let me share the documented case of Robert Patterson from Richmond, who ignored this warning and actively sought dream contact with deceased relatives through ritual magic. Reading 117304 revealed he had attracted several earthbound spirits who were depleting his energy and causing psychological disturbance. Cayce's recommendations required months of spiritual cleansing and prayer to restore Patterson's psychic equilibrium. This brings us to one of Cayce's most important revelations about the ultimate purpose of these spiritual encounters. According to reading 1472-12, contact with deceased souls serves as preparation for your own transition at death. Each successful communication builds familiarity with the spiritual dimensions you'll eventually inhabit. Cayce taught that souls who develop healthy relationships with the spirit world during physical life experience smoother transitions at death. They understand the spiritual mechanics involved and are less likely to become earthbound themselves. Reading 2072-4 specifically states that fear of death dissolves through positive spiritual contact during dreams. Here's something that will completely shift your perspective on grief and loss. Cayce revealed in reading 1598-1 that maintaining loving but non-possessive contact with deceased loved ones actually helps both parties evolve spiritually. The living learn to love without attachment, while the deceased learn to serve from higher dimensions without being pulled back to earth. The documented healing that occurs through this understanding is remarkable. Sarah Williams of Norfolk lost her teenage daughter in an automobile accident and was consumed with grief for over a year. Through implementing Cayce's teachings from reading 1159-1, she learned to communicate with her daughter in dreams while encouraging her spiritual progression. This transformed her grief into a source of spiritual strength and intuitive wisdom. But wait, there's one more crucial element Cayce discovered about timing these encounters that most people never consider. According to reading 575611, our own spiritual development determines the quality of spirits we attract during dreams. The higher our vibration, the more advanced the souls who can communicate with us. This creates an incredible opportunity for spiritual acceleration. By consistently raising your consciousness through meditation, prayer, and service to others, you begin attracting contact with spiritually advanced souls who can provide genuine guidance and wisdom. Reading 262-19 documents cases where people receive detailed spiritual instruction during dream communications with evolved souls. Cayce's own experiences prove this principle. Throughout his career, he maintained contact with several discarnate teachers who provided guidance for his readings and personal development. These relationships, documented in readings like 294-8, show how dream communication can become a source of ongoing spiritual education. Here's the practical application that can transform your own spiritual journey starting tonight. Cayce recommended establishing what he called a spiritual communication protocol. Before sleep, set clear intentions about the type of spiritual contact you welcome, always requesting only the highest good and most evolved guidance. The documented results speak for themselves. Dr. William McGarry, who worked closely with Cayce's medical readings, implemented these protocols and reported regular communication with deceased physicians who provided insights for treating difficult cases. These experiences, documented in ARI archives, show how dream communication can extend professional knowledge beyond physical limitations. But there's something even more profound here about the ultimate implications of Cayce's teachings. According to Reading 1472 Tout 15, successful dream communication with deceased souls proves the continuity of consciousness beyond physical death. Each genuine encounter provides personal evidence that your essential self will survive bodily death. This realization transforms how you live your current life. Knowing that consciousness continues, that relationships persist beyond death, and that spiritual growth remains possible in other dimensions removes the existential fear that limits so many people. Reading 57493 specifically states that this knowledge accelerates spiritual evolution by removing the ego's desperate attachment to physical survival. Let me share one final documented case that illustrates the transformative power of understanding these principles. Dr. Margaret Gammon, a psychiatrist from Virginia Beach, initially approached Cayce's teachings with scientific skepticism. After her mother's death, however, she experienced vivid dreams where her mother provided specific guidance about treating emotionally disturbed children. Following Cayce's protocols from Reading 1174-1, Dr. Gammon learned to distinguish between wish fulfillment dreams and genuine spiritual communication. The guidance she received led to breakthrough treatments that helped dozens of children recover from severe psychological trauma. Her documented cases prove that dream communication can provide practical knowledge unavailable through conventional sources. The implications of Cayce's teachings extend far beyond individual comfort about death and dreams. They suggest that human consciousness operates in dimensions we're only beginning to understand, that death represents transition rather than termination, and that spiritual relationships can transcend physical limitations. These documented readings from Virginia Beach have influenced modern research into consciousness, near-death experiences, and transpersonal psychology. Scientists at universities across America now study phenomena that Cayce described decades before mainstream academia acknowledged their existence. What started as a young man's ability to diagnose illness while in trance evolved into a comprehensive understanding of consciousness that continues expanding human knowledge. The Association for Research and Enlightenment maintains complete records of these readings, available for anyone seeking to verify these documented cases and continue this investigation. Your dreams may never seem the same after understanding these principles. Every encounter with deceased loved ones becomes an opportunity for mutual spiritual growth rather than merely emotional comfort. Every successful communication proves the continuity of consciousness and the reality of spiritual dimensions most people never imagine. The protective methods Cayce provided ensure these encounters remain beneficial rather than draining. The spiritual preparation he recommended transforms fear into wisdom and grief into evolving love. Most importantly, the documented effectiveness of these approaches provides hope that death represents transformation rather than termination. Tonight, when you prepare for sleep, remember that you're entering dimensions where consciousness operates by different laws, where love transcends physical separation, where knowledge comes through direct transmission, and where your spiritual evolution continues through relationships that death cannot end. Edgar Cayce's legacy lives on through the thousands of people who have applied these principles and discovered their truth through personal experience. The readings archived in Virginia Beach continue providing guidance for anyone seeking to understand the deeper realities of consciousness and the magnificent continuity of spiritual existence beyond physical death. What if I told you that when a deceased loved one appears in your dreams 3 times, Edgar Cayce's readings reveal this isn't coincidence, but a specific spiritual communication that requires immediate action. The Sleeping Prophet documented over 14,000 psychic readings, and buried within his most profound cases are instructions for what you must do when the departed reach across the veil of death to contact you through dreams. Right now, as you're watching this, someone who has crossed over may be trying to reach you. The question is, are you prepared to receive their message? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what Cayce discovered about these supernatural dream visits and the 3 critical steps you must take when they happen to you. But first, let me ask you something that might make your spine tingle. Have you ever had a dream about someone who passed away that felt so real, so vivid, that you woke up wondering if they were actually trying to tell you something? Drop a comment below, because what I'm about to share from Cayce's documented readings might explain exactly what happened to you that night. In reading 57564, Edgar Cayce encountered a case that would change everything we understand about communication between the living and the dead. A woman came to Cayce desperate for answers. Her deceased husband had appeared in her dreams not once, not twice, but 3 consecutive times, each dream more urgent than the last. What Cayce revealed in that reading shocked even his stenographer Gladys Davis, who had transcribed thousands of sessions. The sleeping prophet explained that when deceased relatives visit our dreams 3 times, it represents what he called a soul emergency, a spiritual SOS from the other side that cannot be ignored. But here's where it gets interesting, and this might change everything you thought you knew about the afterlife. Cayce discovered through his readings that souls who have crossed over don't just randomly appear in dreams. According to reading 37444, the spirit world operates under specific laws, and repeated dream visitations follow a divine pattern. When someone appears 3 times, they're following what Cayce termed the law of spiritual persistence. They have an urgent message that must be delivered before they can progress to higher spiritual planes. But wait, there's something even more remarkable that Cayce uncovered about these supernatural encounters. In his research at Virginia Beach, now home to the Edgar Cayce Foundation, he documented case after case where 3-time dream visitors weren't just saying goodbye. They were delivering warnings, revealing hidden information, or providing guidance for major life decisions. Reading 9872 describes a mother who appeared to her son 3 times in dreams, each time pointing to a specific location in their family home. When he finally investigated, he discovered important legal documents she had hidden before her death, documents that saved the family from financial ruin. This raises a crucial question that I'll answer in just 3 minutes. But first you need to understand something that most people completely miss about dream communication with the deceased. According to Cayce's reading 5756.12, our consciousness during sleep becomes a bridge between the physical and spiritual dimensions. When we dream, we're actually traveling in what he called the borderland, a space where communication between worlds becomes possible. But here's the key insight that separates Edgar Cayce's teachings from everything else you've heard about dream visitations. The sleeping prophet discovered that not all dream encounters with the deceased are actual spirit communication. In reading 136-18, he explained that some dreams about dead relatives are simply our subconscious mind processing grief and memories. The difference lies in the specificity and repetition of the message. When a deceased loved one appears 3 times with the same urgent message or showing you the same specific thing, Cayce's readings indicate this transcends normal dream activity. This is direct soul-to-soul communication, and according to his documented cases, ignoring these visits can have serious consequences for both the living and the departed soul. Here's what happened in one of the most documented cases from the Association for Research and Enlightenment Archives in Virginia Beach. A businessman named Robert received 3 consecutive dreams from his deceased father, each more vivid than the last. In each dream, his father appeared distressed, repeatedly pointing to a specific tree in their old family property in Kentucky. Robert initially dismissed these dreams as grief, but after the 3rd visitation, he remembered Cayce's teachings about the significance of 3-time dream visits. Following the sleeping prophet's guidance, Robert traveled to the family property and investigated the tree his father had shown him. Buried beneath its roots, he discovered a metal box containing evidence of a crime his father had witnessed decades earlier. Evidence that would finally bring justice to a cold case and allow his father's soul to find peace. But this story reveals something even more profound about the spiritual laws governing communication with the deceased. And in just 2 minutes, I'll share the 3 specific steps Cayce outlined for responding to these supernatural dream visits. Reading 281.6 contains one of Cayce's most detailed explanations of what he called Post-mortem soul communication. According to the sleeping prophet, when someone dies, their soul doesn't immediately ascend to higher spiritual planes. Instead, they often remain in what he termed the earthbound dimension to complete unfinished spiritual business. These souls can only communicate with the living during specific conditions, primarily when our conscious mind is quiet during sleep. However, Cayce discovered that breaking through the barrier between dimensions requires enormous spiritual energy. This is why deceased relatives typically appear only when their message is urgent enough to justify the spiritual effort required. The three-time pattern isn't arbitrary. In reading 262.8, Cayce explained that 3 represents completion in spiritual lore. 1 appearance might be dismissed as imagination, 2 could be coincidence, but 3 visits represent a completed spiritual circuit, a message that has gathered enough energy to demand attention from the living. Now here's where Cayce's teachings become practical guidance that could change your life. In reading 57.5.6.14, the sleeping prophet outlined 3 specific steps you must take when a deceased relative visits your dreams 3 times. These aren't suggestions. According to Cayce, these are spiritual obligations that honor both the departed soul and your own spiritual development. Step 1 involves what Cayce called conscious acknowledgement. Immediately upon waking from the 3rd dream, you must verbally acknowledge the visitation. Speak aloud to your deceased loved one, saying something like, "I recognize your visit and I'm ready to receive your message." Cayce discovered that this verbal acknowledgement creates what he termed a spiritual bridge that strengthens the connection between dimensions. But here's something that might shock you about why this acknowledgement is so crucial. According to reading 37445, departed souls can become trapped in the earthbound dimension when their urgent messages go unheeded by the living. Cayce documented cases where souls remained stuck for decades, unable to progress spiritually because their 3-time dream visits were ignored or dismissed. Your conscious acknowledgement literally helps free their soul to continue its spiritual journey. Step 2 requires what the sleeping prophet called meditative receptivity. Within 24 hours of the 3rd dream visit, you must enter a quiet, meditative state and specifically invite the deceased to communicate more clearly. Cayce recommended sitting in a comfortable position, closing your eyes, and mentally asking your departed loved one to reveal their message through impressions, images, or intuitive knowing. In reading 262.15, Cayce explained that this meditative receptivity opens what he called soul channels, direct communication pathways that bypass the symbolic nature of dreams. Many people who followed this guidance reported receiving crystal-clear messages about hidden family secrets, warnings about future events, or guidance for important life decisions. But it's the 3rd step that separates casual spiritual seekers from those who truly understand Cayce's teachings about interdimensional communication. Step 3 demands physical action based on the received message. According to reading 57.5.6.8, spirit communication without corresponding action in the physical world creates what Cayce termed spiritual static, interference that blocks future communication and leaves both souls unsatisfied. This means, if your deceased relative shows you a specific location in dreams, you must physically investigate that place. If they warn you about a particular person or situation, you must take appropriate precautionary action. If they reveal hidden information, you must act on that knowledge responsibly. The Association for Research and Enlightenment archives contain hundreds of documented cases where people who followed all 3 steps experienced profound positive changes in their lives, while those who ignored the spiritual guidance faced repeated difficulties until they finally heeded the message. Here's a case that demonstrates the power of properly responding to 3-time dream visitations. Sarah, a nurse from Virginia, began receiving dreams from her deceased grandmother, exactly 1 year after the older woman's passing. In each of the 3 dreams, her grandmother appeared in their old family kitchen, frantically opening and closing the same cabinet drawer. The dreams were so vivid that Sarah could smell her grandmother's distinctive perfume and hear the familiar creak of the old wooden drawer. Following Cayce's 3-step protocol, Sarah first acknowledged the visitation aloud, then entered meditation to receive clearer guidance. During her meditative state, She received a strong impression to check inside that specific kitchen drawer in her grandmother's house, which was now empty and scheduled for sale. When Sarah investigated, she discovered a hidden compartment in the drawer containing her grandmother's original immigration documents and a significant amount of cash that the family never knew existed. More importantly, the documents revealed crucial family history that helped Sarah understand inherited health conditions that doctors had been unable to diagnose. But here's what makes this case even more remarkable, according to Cayce's understanding of spiritual law. After Sarah took action on her grandmother's message, she reported that her recurring dreams about her grandmother completely stopped, but were replaced by beautiful, peaceful dreams where her grandmother appeared happy and surrounded by light. According to reading 136:22, this transformation indicates that the departed soul successfully delivered its message and was finally free to progress to higher spiritual dimensions. This pattern appears consistently throughout Cayce's documented cases of 3-time dream visitations. When people properly acknowledge, receive, and act upon the spiritual communication, both the living and the deceased experience profound spiritual advancement. However, Cayce also documented the consequences of ignoring these supernatural dream visits, and what he discovered might disturb you. In reading 5756-19, the Sleeping Prophet described what happens when repeated dream visitations from deceased relatives are dismissed or ignored. The departed soul becomes increasingly agitated, unable to progress spiritually, while their urgent message remains undelivered. This spiritual frustration can manifest in the physical world as unusual occurrences around the living person, unexplained sounds, electrical disturbances, or feelings of being watched. More seriously, Cayce discovered that ignoring spiritual guidance from deceased loved ones can block your own spiritual development. In reading 262-20, he explained that rejecting communication from the spirit world creates what he called soul resistance, a hardening of your intuitive abilities that makes it increasingly difficult to receive guidance from any spiritual source. The Sleeping Prophet documented cases where people who repeatedly ignored dream visitations from deceased relatives later faced significant life challenges that could have been avoided if they had heeded the spiritual warnings they received. But there's another aspect of 3-time dream visitations that Cayce discovered, something that reveals the deeper purpose behind these supernatural encounters. According to reading 281-12, deceased relatives who appear 3 times in dreams aren't just delivering messages, they're also serving as spiritual teachers, helping their living loved ones develop psychic abilities and deepen their connection to the spirit world. Each visitation strengthens what Cayce called your soul sensitivity, gradually opening your consciousness to higher spiritual dimensions. This means that properly responding to dream visits from deceased relatives doesn't just help them, it accelerates your own spiritual evolution. Cayce taught that these encounters are opportunities for mutual spiritual growth, where both the living and the departed benefit from the sacred exchange of communication across dimensional barriers. Reading 37442 contains Cayce's most profound insight about why some people receive these supernatural dream visits while others never experience them. According to the Sleeping Prophet, 3-time visitations occur most frequently among individuals who are spiritually ready to serve as bridges between the physical and spirit worlds. If you're receiving these dreams, Cayce would say it indicates that your soul has developed sufficient spiritual sensitivity to handle direct communication with departed souls. This isn't something to fear. It's recognition of your spiritual advancement and readiness to serve a higher purpose. The Edgar Cayce Foundation in Virginia Beach maintains extensive records showing that people who properly respond to dream visitations from deceased relatives often go on to develop remarkable psychic abilities themselves. Many become mediums, healers, or spiritual counselors, using their enhanced sensitivity to help others connect with the spirit world. But here's something crucial that Cayce emphasized about these supernatural gifts. In reading 5756-6, the Sleeping Prophet warned that psychic abilities developed through spirit communication must be used for service to others, not personal gain. Those who attempt to profit from their connection to the spirit world or use their abilities to manipulate others inevitably lose their spiritual sensitivity and may attract negative spiritual influences. This is why Cayce always emphasized that responding to dream visitations from deceased relatives should be approached with reverence, humility, and a sincere desire to serve both the departed soul and the greater good. Now, as we near the end of this exploration of Edgar Cayce's teachings about supernatural dream communication, I want to address something that might be troubling some viewers. What if you've already experienced 3-time dream visitations from a deceased loved one, but didn't know how to respond properly? Is it too late to help their soul find peace and receive their important message? According to reading 136-28, it's never too late to acknowledge and respond to spiritual communication from deceased relatives. Cayce taught that souls in the spirit world exist outside linear time as we understand it, which means your departed loved ones can still receive your acknowledgement and response even months or years after their dream visits. The sleeping prophet recommended a specific process for reconnecting with deceased relatives whose previous dream messages you may have missed or ignored. This involves entering deep meditation, sincerely apologizing for not recognizing their earlier attempts at communication, and opening yourself completely to receive their message now. Many people who followed this guidance reported that their deceased loved ones returned in dreams within days, often appearing more peaceful and communicating their messages more clearly than in the original visitations. This reveals something beautiful about the nature of love and spiritual connection that transcends death itself. Throughout his 14,000 documented readings, Edgar Cayce consistently emphasized that death doesn't end relationships, it transforms them. The bonds of love that connect us to family members continue beyond physical death, manifesting as ongoing spiritual communication and mutual support between dimensions. When deceased relatives appear in our dreams 3 times, they're not haunting us or trying to frighten us. They're continuing to love us, protect us, and guide us from their position in the spirit world. Responding properly to their visitations honors this eternal love and helps both souls grow spiritually. Reading 281:16 contains one of Cayce's most comforting insights about dream communication with deceased loved ones. He explained that every soul that has ever loved us continues to watch over us from the spirit world, occasionally intervening in our lives when their guidance is desperately needed. This means you're never truly alone, even in your darkest moments. The love of those who have passed before you remains active and available, reaching across the veil of death to offer comfort, guidance, and protection when you need it most. As you go forward from watching this video, remember that Edgar Cayce's teachings about dream visitations from deceased relatives aren't just fascinating metaphysical concepts, they're practical spiritual tools that can transform your life and help departed souls find peace. If you've experienced 3-time dream visits from a deceased loved one, now you know exactly what to do. Acknowledge their communication, enter meditation to receive their message clearly, and take appropriate action in the physical world based on their guidance. If you haven't yet experienced these supernatural dreams, remain open to the possibility. According to Cayce, as more people awaken spiritually in these changing times, communication between the living and the dead will become increasingly common. The sleeping prophet believed that understanding and properly responding to spirit communication would become essential skills for spiritual growth in the coming age. By learning these principles now, you're preparing yourself to serve as a bridge between worlds, helping both departed souls and living people navigate the mysteries of life, death, and eternal spiritual connection. Remember, every soul that has ever touched your life with love continues to care about your spiritual journey. When they reach across the dimensions to guide you through dreams, they're offering you one of the most precious gifts possible: continued love and guidance from beyond the veil of death. Honor their gift by remaining spiritually aware, acknowledging their communications and acting on their loving guidance.